All right off the top, I'd like to point out that this is my second YouTube video in one calendar year. In other words, a new record. Um, I do appreciate people reaching out to encourage me to record more videos. That's very nice of you, very flattering. I'm happy that people seem to be getting a lot out of these videos. And this year, 2016. I've heard the most from people, so that's great. Thank you very much. It always helps bolster my confidence, but also my desire to make these videos when I hear that people are getting a lot out of them. So thank you. So, getting right into it. This is a painting from imagination. No real reference other than my experience in painting from life. This is just a blank canvas on one layer, and I have a basic scene in my mind. Actually, it's not so much of a scene as it is an emotion that I'm trying to follow. That's like my beat on this, is I have an emotional resonance that I want to hit visually, and I can't really explain what it feels like to hit it, or when I know I've hit it. It's just something you know. But what I can explain is my process, and that's what I'll be doing for the next 40 minutes. I'm just blocking in a basic composition. I know there will be two characters in the scene. There's going to be the green monster character on the right, and you can actually kind of see him in the foreground, that spherical shape. There's also going to be a child character on the left, and they're kind of bisected by that what looks like it might be a group of trees. Now, when I painted this, that group of trees that is kind of there right now on the left third is really the only visual thing I had in mind. That's the only thing I knew I wanted in the picture, is that. So I started there, which makes sense, right? If you're working from imagination, I always start with the thing that I know should be there. And you can apply that to I think, any creative discipline. Start with what you know, and then you can almost set out from there to add and find and discover the things you might not know. So those are going to be birch trees, and you can see I'm blocking in those characteristic patterns that birch trees have, and I love the graphic nature of that, so I'm putting that in. And again, I'm just making it easier for myself when I put in things I know. Now, in terms of color temperature, and by the way, for those who might only be seeing this video, if you haven't seen my other videos, I talk a lot more about the theory and technique and approach to color temperature and values in my other videos. So I'll link a few of these on the screen as we go, things that you can refer to if you haven't seen my other videos. But on this one, this is more of a complete demo, and I'm just going to talk through as I go. So it's going to be more just thoughts rather than the solid technical info that I've already covered in my other videos. So just cropping things here and there, just to arrive at a more pleasing composition. And again, I go by feel. But I do know that I don't want anything directly in the center of the canvas. I want things to be relatively placed on the thirds. You guys have probably heard the rule of thirds. That's a generally good idea, to place things off center. I do have a kind of an interesting risk in this particular illustration where that group of trees is suspiciously close to center, but my two subject matters, being the monster and the eventual kid who will be there, they are going to be both left and right of center. And I'm going to try my best to have this painting still be a cohesive unit by having them being engaged with each other on both the left and right sides of the frame. Otherwise, the risk with having a composition that is too centered, the risk is kind of you cut your image in half, and essentially you've made a painting on the left and a painting on the right, and that doesn't work usually. So that's a risk I actually have to deal with in this painting. Speaking of risk, there is a heavy risk of failure when you don't do any planning. And I assure you, I have not done any planning for this except for the years of practice I've put into this. But there is no planning. I just opened the canvas, opened a Photoshop canvas and started painting. And I like I said, the only thing I had was an emotion. I just had some kind of thing inside me that needed to come out. And that's a very abstract idea, but that's all I had was an abstract idea. And the process of imagination painting like this is to bring an abstract idea into real life and make it so that other people feel that emotion you had. It's kind of a profound thing we do as artists. That's what we do. There's some reference I had, by the way, just some birch trees in the winter. It's impossible to know the detail of everything. And you can see I'm working on these little snow patches on the tree. That is something that is great to use reference for, because I might have been able to invent that, but without seeing it and reminding myself what it looks like, you'll probably just arrive at some cliche. Painting from life, which I do a lot, is very helpful in avoiding cliches, because you have experience with what things actually look like, and you're engaged with the real thing. So when you go to paint, okay, let me explain what I'm doing here. That is a trend I'm noticing in the composition, that kind of everything is fanning out from the bottom. And that's a good thing. I think that's a cool pattern that I want to maintain. That's the reason why I flip the painting upside down like that, is because when you flip it upside down, you divorce yourself from the literal part of it, and you only see the kind of abstract trends that are going on. And I noticed I was fanning things out from the bottom, and that's cool. I think that creates a movement in the piece, and I want to stick with that. Back to what I was saying about photo reference. Yeah, you can engage yourself with the real thing, like painting from life, as much as you can, and I certainly recommend it. I do it more than I paint from imagination. I paint from life. And that just gives my imagination stuff a believability, and it gives me, the painter, a confidence that when I have an emotional feeling like I did with this one, I can bring it out from my imagination and not have to rely and slavishly go over photo reference. So when I do have photo reference, it's just for little details, like things I otherwise might not get right. So as you can see, one of the risks, I was talking about risk earlier, I never finished that thought either. One of the big risks in painting from scratch without planning on just one layer is that I don't know if I can stay on the rails with this thing. I don't know if this thing's going to go awry, or if I'm going to come up with something I like. For example, I'm completely missing one of my characters right now. The green monster is there, and you can see I'm playing with his drawing. Like right now, it looks like he's looking down, but at the end, you'll notice it's a very different pose. I don't even have the kid character in there yet. And I'm kind of risking a whole lot of stuff there. I don't know if he's going to work compositionally. I don't know if the kid's going to read where I think he might read. This is something you can solve in a planning stage. And I talk more about planning in my previous videos. And, planning of all kinds, composition and color, etc., color keys. You can review my old videos for that. But honestly, what I love to do when I paint is go in kind of naked, like just go in unprepared. And just kind of rely on the experience that I have to navigate and solve these problems on the fly. It kind of keeps me limber and just, I guess, makes me feel like I'm not committed to any one thing, and I can commit as I go. It's kind of a freeing way of painting. So I'm blocking in some light on the monster character. Still have no idea what his pose is going to be, but I'm trying to find the best readability for him. And I'm noticing that my painting looks like, zooming out, of course, just to test readability. I'm noticing when I zoom out like this that the painting has kind of a dark on light feel, meaning that the monster character is a dark shape and the background is a light shape. So you can just see there with the airbrush, I'm reinforcing that. I had like an overlay brush. And I'm just brushing in some light orangey tones, like golden oranges, as if the sun is kind of starting to set and it's causing this golden stuff to suffuse everything in the background. Kind of like a dusk golden hour sort of thing. And then the monster character, he's more in shadow, so he'll be a dark shape. There's some more reference. I'm referencing my own art because I have to keep the character consistent. And the monster will be a dark shape that reads over top of the light shape. That's just basic illustration 101, right? Dark over light, light over dark. You can see I'm playing with the pose. This is all on one layer, so if I want to change it, I just have to scrub it out and paint over it. But this is the first time that I'm arriving at a pose for the monster that I like. I really like tilting his head up like that, giving him a bit of a gesture. He's clearly twisting his body like he's engaged in an action. I really like that. Just as far as illustration goes, it's more fun to paint that because it feels like it's a moment in time rather than something static. And it's going to make the painting more interesting. So I'm just scribbling. I'm literally scribbling at times. See those colors, those random colors I put on the character there? Those colors are quote-unquote mistakes. They're not supposed to be there. But I did it on purpose. I purposely made a mistake because the act of painting into it is going to give me something unexpected and hopefully interesting. It's kind of a calculated risk. So I'm painting into it, painting over it with a whole bunch of brushes. I'm purposely not showing you my brushes. I'm purposely keeping that off screen because I know that a question I get asked a lot is, what kind of brushes do you use? And can I have your brushes? The answer to the last question is, yes, you can have my brushes. They're right here. go ahead and download them, play with them. But I think the conclusion you will reach as you play with anyone's brushes is that it's not the brush that makes the painting, it's the painter, which seems self-evident, but I'm afraid that it's often not. So feel free to have fun with these brushes, but really a good illustration boils down to how well you control values. For example, I'm showing you here that monster character needs to read better. It needs to be darker over lighter. It's not quite reading well. So here I am darkening it up. This has nothing to do with brush selection. It has everything to do with kind of conceptualizing what you want your image to look like and how you want it to read. You can study compositions from great painters in the past and from modern illustrators. Study what makes their images look nice. And I guarantee you it's not the brushes. It's what's behind it. Oh yeah, time for bed. So I went to bed. This is about 2 hours into the painting, and woke up, and here we are. I'm awake the next day with fresh eyes and a fresh mind. I'm feeling good, and I think taking a break. The reason I included that is taking a break from the painting is an excellent idea, because often you'll just get tunnel vision. I'm sure everyone here has felt this. You get used to your image, and all of a sudden when you look at it the next day, you're like, what the heck is this? Like, I didn't paint that. That looks terrible. That's why you want to take breaks, so you give yourself a chance to look at it with fresh eyes. And if something doesn't look right, well, it's up to you to fix it. Here I am adding the boy. After about 2 hours of painting, I'm finally starting to add him. And what that's going to do, I needed him in there. I probably should have put him in a bit earlier. But what he is going to do is he is going to contextualize that entire right half of the composition. Because he's going to be the focal point of that area. Of course, I put him in as a rough block, and now I'm already moving around. I'm kind of sporadic that way, but it's in service of the whole picture. I want the whole picture to come up at once. So I'm putting in a whole background element here because I felt like that part of the background just looked a little unused. It looked a little blank. So I want something there that holds its place. It has a hierarchy. It's not that important. It's important that the space be used and the viewer feels like it's populated, but that hut is not the star of the painting. That hut is less important than the monster, so it needs to sit as such. So I'm putting it in, trying to not overstate it, and I'll go back to it. I'll go back to the kid, for example. I'm always in service of the whole picture, and the whole picture needs to resonate emotionally and everything needs to be sorted properly. I think that's the goal of the painter, is you are bringing chaos into order. And what order looks like is not everything equal. That's not order. Order is everything placed appropriately. And that is what I'm trying to do with my work. So you will see areas in the painting, like those background houses, for example, and the background forest, that are treated much differently than the characters in the foreground. That's very much intentional. That is an emotional reaction that I have with this piece. But it's the psychology of it comes from painting from life. When I'm out there painting, I know from engaging with the real thing that is how we react. We see and we register what we feel is important about the scene. Everything else, our brain kind of chunks into the background. So in this case, literally the background is being placed as just that. It's being played as a background. It's not as important as the characters. At this point, what I'm doing is I'm working on the abstraction of the birch trees in the middle. I kind of enjoy the fact that the two characters, they will be pieces of less abstract work over, and sort of bisecting them is this abstract middle ground of trees. I kind of like that. So I'm just having pure fun with edges, soft versus hard edges, trying to get these trees to look like birch trees that have snow on them. But you'll notice I'm not zoomed in. I'm not getting caught up in detail or anything like that. I'm not trying to show you what I know about birch trees. I'm trying to show you an emotional statement, something that your brain interprets as birch trees, but it's really out of an abstract painting. And that's just my favorite style of painting, I guess. What I'm doing here is experimenting, really, just adding some harder edges to the monster, trying to pop him out from the softer shapes behind him. Of course, I don't want to overdo that, so I'll use the selection tool sometimes for shapes I want to be very hard-edged, but too much of that starts looking digital. So I'm just working on this monster character. You'll notice that the sketch marks I had in before are pretty much painted over, but I know that they have informed the overall color statement of that area. Like, it's not like they're erased. They're still there underneath, and they informed the piece. I'm still working on the monster's pose. I still haven't arrived at the pose. I kind of like where the face is, and I like the twist of his body, but you notice he has no arms. There I'm trying to paint, he's kind of holding a snowball, maybe as if he's throwing it, and he doesn't know how to throw that well, so he's kind of doing this weird pose. That's kind of cool. I'll see if that works. I'll let that sit for a while, because that is kind of like, the character. The pose of the character tells you who the character is, especially in a still illustration. So I need those poses to be bang on. So I'll try a lot of them. If this were a piece for a client, maybe I would have worked this out beforehand, but this is just for me, so I'm going to do it all in one shot. Alla prima, right? The painting's upside down, and I've done this a few times so far, I think. The reason I paint upside down, again, is I notice the trends, the abstract trends of the painting, and when I paint upside down, I'm not painting subject matter, I'm painting abstraction. I'm just trying to further the abstract statement. The abstract statement is not something you consciously notice as a viewer. It's something you feel. And I notice when I teach my classes, and by the way, if you want to study with me, you can take my class at CGMA. Here's a link. It's called The Art of Color and Light. And one of the things I notice with a lot of my students is there is a hesitancy to allow things to be abstract. There seems to be like a pedantic nature that people have. I think it's just human nature, because I had it too when I was first starting out, and I still have it to some degree, where you want to put things in that you want to show your knowledge of something in a painting. And what that does is it robs you of the willingness and bravery of keeping something abstract. And honestly, the abstract is much more interesting than the fully realized, because the abstract allows the viewer to participate. You've probably heard this a million times in art theory classes, allow the viewer to participate. It's true though. You want the viewer to take these brushstrokes and convert them in their own brain. And that's, again, like I said earlier, that is how we view real life. We don't see real life detail for detail. We chunk things, we define very quickly, subconsciously, our brains define what's important, and everything else is not important. It's a very binary operation. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that kind of psychology and applying it to the piece. What's important, I will show you. What's not important, I will also show you that, but I'll do so by relegating it to where it needs to be in its hierarchy. So I am continuing work on the painting. It's probably soon time for another break, and I definitely do take another break. But right now I'm just maybe working on where that boy is, because I'm starting to fear that I'm running away from that area. I'm scared of it, and I'll want to work on it more, because that is the least developed part of the painting. And as my finish progresses in the other areas, if I leave it behind there, it becomes like this straggling piece of work that I need to bring up. And I know just from experience that paintings work better when you bring them up all together as a whole, rather than leaving a problem to the end, because then it just never turns out right when you do that. So that's why you'll probably see me working on that area a little more. I just cropped away some of it. That's part of the solution. I cropped away, didn't need as much. So here's a big change. I've got an airbrush. Actually, this is the first time I'm using a layer. I've got a new layer, setting it to probably overlay. And I got a big warm airbrush, and I brushed in some nice warm light. Compositionally, that serves the purpose of allowing the monster to be even darker over something even lighter by comparison. And I can erase out the areas that don't look as good and keep in the areas that do look good. It's one of the benefits of digital painting. Constantly A-Bing it. And then by now I've flattened it. I'm happy with it. I have flattened it down. I'm back to one layer, and I'm back to building the painting up in one layer. So this is, fun with digital. I like using layers for exploratory things like that, things that have a heavy risk of not working. And at this point in the painting, I'm certainly not risk averse, but when it comes to altering the whole thing, why not use a layer? I mean, you have them, right? So always working on passages. I noticed that my tree shapes were kind of confining, almost as if it were like a little jail cell. So I'm adding trees that break that shape. I will later add a tree on the very hard right to help that even more. But right now I'm just working on the abstraction in the background, Everything comes up together, because as I increase the finish on one thing, I, have in a sense, I have increased the difference between that area and another area. So it's constantly this checking system. Like, okay, I've kind of like the guy who spins the plates at the circus. Like, I've spun those plates. Now I got to go over here and spin these plates, or else this area is going to fall away. And that's not a good thing. This hut, I'm working on just a bit of detail back there, just some, not detail, but things you'd expect to see. Like there, it felt blank without just a few windows there. And expectation is a cool thing to think about when you're painting. Like, what is it that you expect to have in a scene? And, something as simple as windows, well, it might look weird without them. So I'll satisfy that little expectation. Lost and found. Okay, so lost and found, if you look at that rooftop of the hut, notice how on the left side of it, it blends in with the background. And then, once I zoom in again, on where the hut reaches its peak, you notice it's a hard edge. That's a very intricate bit of lost and found work, where it's the same object, it's the same rooftop, but there is a lost edge and then there is a found edge, and one thing gradates into another. So it's not like one object is really one object at all. It's part of the abstract statement. And if I made that roof just one hard edge, the risk would be it commands too much attention. But by having a bit of a passage of lost and found, I've kind of helped relegate it to the background, which I've already talked about. I have to say that one of the most revolutionary discoveries I made in my life as an artist is when I realized what a painting is. And what it is it's a poem. It's not a picture, it's a poem. And what that means to me anyway, is that everything needs to play off everything else in order to build a whole that is more than the sum of its parts. So, nothing is really what it is. Like the houses are not houses, the trees are not trees. They are words in a poem that together flow and connect, and when they are all connected properly, they make an effect that is greater than any one part. And that is, that's art, right? That's what art is. That's what we're trying to do. And that is where I keep using the word pedantic. That is the enemy. Pedantry is the enemy of the artist, because when you are pedantic and you say, I'm going to show you what I know about this, all of a sudden you're forgetting the poem, the poetic aspect. And that is why I paint. That's what I take so much pleasure in. That's why painting is fun. And, just the childlike concept of having fun is a barometer I use in my painting. If I'm not having fun, then why am I doing it? This is why I became a painter, is because it's fun. If I'm not having fun, guess what? I'm probably doing something wrong in the painting. I'm probably, and not only that, the bigger crime is the viewer's probably not going to have fun when they look at it. So that's a constant measurement I'm taking as I progress through a painting. Is I'm having fun? Am I having fun? It sounds completely silly, but it's with art is not academic. This is what we have to do. We have to bring ourselves into that childlike state when we paint. And that is what gives our paintings that feel. It's no coincidence that, if someone's work feels fun and feels childlike and innocent, chances are the artist felt that as they were painting it. I'd like to tie the concept of embodying a childlike state to the concept of failure. I mentioned failure earlier. I went back around 3 minutes and 47 seconds-ish, but I never really finished the thought. I think children are not afraid of failure, at least not in the same way that adults are. And I don't know why that is. I think maybe it has something to do with they just haven't been indoctrinated yet that failure has so many consequences, which might be a construct, I don't know. But as adults, we seem to have this belief that failure leads to so many dire consequences. And what we have to do, our primary objective, is to not fail, and therefore we have a better life. I think that is, at the very least, flawed thinking. And I think failure is an incredibly important tool in art, especially, but in life too, but I'm talking about art here. So I think in art, failure is, the cliche would be failure is what makes you grow, and that certainly is true. But why does failure make you grow? The reason it is because I think just having the willingness to set out on a path that can end up in failure is going to breed in you a kind of it's going to like galvanize some kind of confidence that otherwise you wouldn't be able to access. You don't feel like you're tiptoeing around things. When I dove into this painting, I knew I could fail. It was there, but what I've learned over the years to think of failure literally as a friend, and because of that, it allowed me to think more lightly and more on my feet. I could be looser. I could be just a little more brave with things. And I think that's incredibly important. You can sense when an artist or when another human being has that quality. And painting is certainly a way of revealing that and putting it to practice in your own life. Failure can help you grow because it shows you paths that don't go anywhere. Or maybe maybe a failure shows you paths that go somewhere else that may not happen to be where you want to go today. So you can think of failure as a way of mapping the artistic terrain, so you know where every path leads rather than just how to get from A to B. Okay, so then there's the word success. I don't know if success is the opposite of failure, but I'm not sure if the goal is success. That's not really the goal, because if you have success as your goal, it's very likely that you'll be too terrified to go off course. To tie this back to the concept of childhood, I think the most beautiful part about childhood is that kids are just out to play. That's what a child does. A child seeks play. And that is why most of us, myself for sure, that's why we got into art, is to play as adults. And when you play, there's really no place for the concept of failure as a bad thing. There is no failure. There is no success. That's the beautiful part about play. It's just play. It's wandering and it's fun. So if you can get yourself into that mindset, all of a sudden failure kind of slips away, success kind of slips away, and therefore pressure kind of slips away. And even if this painting didn't work out, well, guess what? The painting didn't work out. Like, how many paintings have I done that don't work out? Hundreds, thousands. Like, you'll do so many of them throughout your life. This is just another one. If the painting does work out, great. Show it to people. Put it on YouTube, whatever you want to do. If the painting doesn't work out, you still played, you still lived a life. It's part of your life, and that is a beautiful thing, and you shouldn't be afraid of that. So I'm looking at values here, looking at composition, getting closer to the end. I'm certainly getting to a point where the statement of abstract versus not abstract, finished versus not finished, all that stuff, the color temperatures, the cropping, all these things I use are starting to feel complete. I'm putting some light into the foreground because I just imagine trees would be off frame casting shadows. If this light is coming in from the hard left or hard right now, there would be things off frame casting shadows. And that's also something I think students tend to miss is the things off frame influence the lighting just as much as what is in frame. So casting a shadow or a piece of light coming from off frame is really believable because it implies that there's a whole world out there beyond the edges of the canvas. So here I am back in the abstraction of the trees, just having fun. The fun never ends, right? The fun only ends when you decide it's done, and then it's time to go on to the next one. Adding a little more rich reds in these trees, and this is just painting from life. I noticed this, that as the sunlight gets lower, it gets redder, and as it gets higher, it gets yellower. Something I noticed from painting from life, and anyone here who has painted from life has probably had the same realization. Painting from life is just the most valuable thing you can do. I have some workshops on my website. You can follow the link and check them out. They're sketchbook painting. There are other ones, the other digital painting ones. For some reason, it's always been part of my goal to help out other artists as much as I can. Other people have helped me in the past and continue to help me. Just because I produce educational content, I still consume educational content. It doesn't mean I'm above learning. That would be a huge mistake. I love watching other painters do their thing, and I think it's important, like once you reach a professional level, the thing you're getting from other artists is not so much instruction. Like I don't really go to these videos to get instruction on how values work. I mean, I've kind of discovered that how values work is not a mystery anymore. But what is still a mystery is how other artists think. Like, how does another human being think, and how does another artist whose work I respect, how does that person tackle the same problem that I have to tackle? Because you can guarantee yourself it's not going to be the same. Another artist is going to have different solutions, different workflows, different philosophies and methods than you, and that is what's fascinating, and that's why I think it's important to always look at other artists' videos, even the stuff you have to pay for. I mean, YouTube is a great thing, but the reality is that some artists put their stuff behind a bit of a paywall, and I still pay for stuff. And that's also why, for those wondering why I don't produce so many videos, I actually do produce videos year long. It's just they're part of my courses. And in my course, just the infrastructure of the course is I can go into more material than I can on YouTube. And also, I don't want to be redundant, right? I don't want to have everything on YouTube, and then I kind of deny myself the ability to teach a class that's more in depth. So what I'm hoping with this one, I hope this video is like equal parts inspiration and information. If you are looking for more like super technical stuff, like how do values work, how do I render form, that's available more in my courses and other people's courses as well. There are so many good ones. So I'm taking stock of the painting again, and it's almost to the point now where it's starting to, I feel like I'm repeating myself almost because I'm not doing anything new. But take a look at this. This is a photo of my bin, all the recordings I did to make this video. Each recording represents about 40 minutes of painting. And what you notice is past maybe level 3, they kind of all look the same. And what's interesting about that is it means that I arrived at the overall statement fairly early, which I wasn't even conscious of. But what that means to me is I had subconsciously, or I don't know how, but I picked a direction early and went with it. And I think that's a powerful kind of way to think when you're working. And that's also why I like working on one layer, because it allows me to pick a direction and go, because I don't have layers to play with. I can't futz around with opacity layers and screen and multiply layers. I can't just change my mind forever. I have to be faithful to my ideas right off the get-go. And I thought that example of the bin was interesting to look at. I only noticed it after I finished the recording. That's why I had the screenshot after everything was recorded. So really what I'm doing now, this would be the cliched cherry on top. Like it's still going to represent hours of work, which I've obviously compressed down to 10 or so minutes of work. But this is where I'm moving into the smaller shapes. If you think of painting as a series of shapes, which it is, it's literally what it is, you'll have your big shapes, and then you'll have your smaller shapes. And what my general process is to go from the big to the small. That just seems to make the most sense when it comes to problem solving. Is you find a house to live in before you think of the television you want, right? In painting, you solve the compositional problems and the overall value structure before you start thinking of how many teeth the monster has. That is just a way that I use to come out with, I guess, just to keep the process flowy and fun, and come out with a cohesive method that I can follow time and time again, no matter what the subject is. And that's how you can also not be afraid of subject matter, because really every subject is abstract. I don't care if you're painting a outer space scene or an alien planet or a monster throwing a snowball or a still life with bananas and apples in a bowl. It's still shapes ranging from big to small. It's still composition. We all have to work within a frame. And within that frame, you are limited to, the frame is like a construct as well. You're limited, you have to work within that language. You're speaking a certain language with art. Well, here's a bit of a cheat. I'm using the liquify tool to, maneuver my drawing. That's just subtle, but I noticed I'd lost a little like cranium mass in the monster's head. And I just used liquify to change that. I don't know if it's cheating. I mean, it's certainly a nice digital tool we have, but if this were a pencil drawing, I would just erase it and redraw it. But again, we have things like Photoshop's liquify tool, and they are there for a reason, so let's use it. And that's not uncommon. I'll often liquify things even more, actually. This painting actually had very little of that kind of method. I was generally happy with how things developed as I went, and that doesn't always happen. So here I am, just kind of, the mistake I could potentially make here, and that I really try and avoid, very conscious of, is overdoing things. I really don't like to overdo things, because then you lose the abstraction again. Going back to the abstraction, overdoing things is an art killer. So I had that on a layer, by the way, because I was afraid of overdoing it. I had his fur texture kind of things I was adding on a different layer. But as usual, I've I've long since flattened it down and gone forward with that. Yeah, finishing a painting, I think it was Richard Schmidt who said, everyone talks about how you can ruin a painting in the beginning by not establishing your big ideas. Then what he said was, it's amazing how many people neglect to tell you about how you can ruin a painting in the end. And that's true. You can overwork in the end. It's almost more dangerous, or equally as dangerous. You can overwork things in the end, and that's very tempting. You know, the common question is, how do I know when I'm done? I think the answer to that is when there are no more questions. Oh, look at this. This is a big change. I'm adding snow falling. I just realized that the emotion in the illustration might benefit from it. It's on a layer with some Gaussian blur, and now I'm erasing out with opacity into that layer, and just getting the ideal amount of falling snow. I haven't radically changed the picture by doing it. Notice I'm relegating it mostly to the top of the frame where you'd see it the most. I don't want to obscure the shapes I worked so hard at, but at the same time, I think that snow falling adds a certain element of, I don't know, maybe something you expect to see. When I was up at a cottage last year, I noticed that there was a beautiful snowfall, and those falling little snowflakes just helped the mood. It contained some kind of emotion that maybe was lacking without it. So it's a small element, which, you know, of course, I'd flatten down again. Although I don't think I've flattened it down yet, because it's maybe a little bit of a larger element I might want control over later, but it's not something that's going to, you know, make or break the process. So now I'm just going back. This is refinement. This picture is conceptually done. There's nothing more to add to it conceptually. All this is now is gilding. This is like if you had something you made out of wood, I'm sanding it now. This is just the final statements, getting things to read exactly as you want. And this is the point in time where I'm thinking, I'm waiting for that bell to go off. I think I mentioned before the emotion was like a bell that's ringing inside. I want my painting to ring that bell. And it's I can't tell you when that happens. It's just something I feel. It's something I've learned to trust over time. Like I'll reach a point where, you know, my brain will just say stop, and I now listen to that, and it's an emotional response, which is good because this painting should be at the level now where it triggers emotions. It stirs them up, and once I feel like I've been able to spur my own emotional reaction, I feel like I can stop. But over all areas, I mean, like every area has to sit well. So look at the subtle stuff now, how the edges go on the boy's jacket, you know, how to separate him from the background, all these little things that are detail. Like this is my version of detail. It's not like I'm painting hairs on the hat. That's not the detail I like to paint. My detail is the small shapes that still contribute to the like larger readability, I guess. That is for me what detail is, just ratcheting down on the shapes and, you know, exactly how does that hat look? Like what's the silhouette of that hat exactly? How does the pattern on the boy's shirt work? Where can I punch out some of those green colors just for interest? Adding a bit of pinkness to the cheek. I'm noticing here that I'll start redrawing the nose a little bit. The nose is looking a little pointy at the top. I'll start redrawing that. I think right here I do it. Little dark accents under the eyes, you know, little things that really no one's going to notice, but the viewer benefits from it almost on a subconscious level. Just knowing that everything is kind of in order, bringing back that concept of order, things being in the right hierarchy. So now it's, you know, I'm at the point in the hierarchy where I'm concerned with what's at the end of the line, like what all these little shapes need to be in their proper hierarchy. And you can drive yourself mad in this stage. You can work on this forever and just tool away at it forever. You have to find a point where you have to say to yourself, okay, stop, I'm done. Because anything I do from here is going to compromise it. So you'll see I just flicked on and off a layer. Sometimes I do put this stage on a layer because I'm afraid of sacrificing a strong statement for a weaker one. As I work on this, I'm very apt to weaken my statement rather than strengthen it. So, you know, sometimes I'll just put it on a layer just for safekeeping kind of thing. But of course, once I like it, I'll A/B it, and once I like it, I'll flatten it down. That way, I can never look back. I'll never, you know, I can never. I won't have the chance to regret what I've done. I can just go forward, plow forward. So, this image can really end any time now. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? I'm not sure. I don't. Oh, by the way, I'm not very good at replying to comments on YouTube, just because it requires me to log out of my regular email and log into a different email, and I'm lazy. So if you want to email me, feel free to get at me at my email address, or Instagram or Facebook. I'm much more likely to reply there, just not so much on YouTube. Oh, here's the redrawing of the nose. I'll probably get right into that shape. That upper shape looks too much like a triangle to me, which I didn't like. So I'm just flattening it out, getting it to look exactly as I want. And that is the finishing touch of this piece. Here, without further ado, is the finished painting. Hope you enjoy. I just want to say thank you again for tuning in, and I really hope you're getting some good stuff out of these videos, because that's why I make them, right? If you're interested in more education, feel free to follow the links in the video description. And if you're interested in the psychological part of creativity like I am, I actually spent the last year writing a book about that. It's called Creativity in the Campfire, and I'd be super flattered if you wanted to give it a read. It's available for like $2.99 on Kindle, and it's also available as a hard copy from my store. So that is it, and I will see you all in 2017.